You can, if you don't have to read it now.
Okay.
You could, you could, if you'd be interested in it. Sick, and so we sent for George to come back, and that's what. He was isolated, couldn't go anywhere, just had to wait.
Away at Nelson.
This was 1952. This was when you had come up looking for property, or you had already
We
found
moved.
You had.
We had come up.
Yeah. We hadn't bought any then. Our stuff was at Crawford Bay.
You know where the ashram
Uh-huh.
in that area. Is it going?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Oh, that's nice.
We came before we came up before we had any land bought.
Okay, I'm gonna make a timeline. Then I can keep it all in order. Okay, and then we can go all anywhere we want on it. But then, so this is 1952, and it's March or April, I guess, 4th.
Yeah, we came across, got through the border stuff at April 2nd.
Now, where were you with measles?
Measles. With the boys?
Were you
Crawford.
back in
Crawford Bay.
You were in Crawford
Yes.
Bay, and you were staying at the ashram.
The ashram wasn't there.
It was Graham Brown's then.
Graham Brown, was he a Quaker?
Yeah. Still is, as far as we know.
I don't know. He belonged to the Vancouver meeting.
Huh.
And Helen, no, anyway, Walter Clayton was a Canadian, and he had met or knew of the Browns, and he told Helen about them, I guess. And then, but see, another group of, George and the Boyds and Rushes came up and went around, and they before that, quite a long time.
The year before, I guess.
Well, the summer, yeah. Fall.
Well, the whole venture started in California, I guess.
Yeah, we were feeling as if we lived in Temple City, not very far from Santa Anita racetrack, and it was horrible with, with the traffic. We couldn't, our lives were programmed to that racetrack.
Yeah.
Go downtown, well, we can't because the traffic is too bad. They didn't pay any attention to people. They were just crazy. And then too, the smog was getting very bad.
Even in the early 50s.
Yes, and the leaves on the leaves were black. Apricot leaves on the back were black, where they breathed.
Wow.
And then the draft, and we had 3 boys, and we didn't think that by 17 that they were old enough to know.
How old was Ted?
He was 15 the summer, our first summer.
So he was coming along and getting real close to it.
And Dick, of course, was 4 years younger, and Don was just little, but even so. And George had, and we were restless. George was a Canadian, so it was natural for us to come to Canada. So and then we found that John and Helen were, and the boys, they were looking around too. So we first thought we would go to Vancouver because Edith was married, and she and her husband were in Vancouver. He was going to UBC, and we thought we would go there. But we got up to Tracy and the Boyds and Stevensons and Rushes, and they convinced us to go with them.
And had they already picked the Kootenays?
No, they didn't pick the Kootenays until after John and Helen and George and I, all of our families and all of our furniture and all of our stuff, their cats and chickens and our dogs and their dog. We were all down there at Walker's Landing, there where the ashram is. And then Bob came up and John Rush, and they went wandering around then with the agricultural advisor, and George's letter tells that. And looked for land. Looking for land and a place to be.
Why did you have an agricultural advisor? It was farming that you wanted to do.
Oh, well, yes. I don't know how we met him.
Probably you, Brown, what's his name, Graham Brown, didn't he?
It may be, and also, that fellow that sang tenor in that Bach concert we went to hear. He was, somehow we got acquainted with him. I think he was somewhat agricultural at that point too.
But you were looking for farming land.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Had you all farmed in California?
Well,
More or less.
you know.
So
Bob and John. Bob had tomatoes, you see. He raised tomatoes for Campbell's soup or something like that.
Yeah.
Pounds of them, or boxes and boxes.
Oh, he had a huge trailer.
Then he gathered them up in boxes.
And towed it with his Ford tractor, I think.
And that was what he moved his stuff up in.
So you were all at Crawford Bay. You were looking around with this government agent, agricultural agent.
He wasn't with us
All the time.
except,
You did.
well, we rented a boat from Papa Jones and came up to Lardeau. I don't know when he joined us.
The agriculture person.
Yeah,
I thought he was with them.
Sig Peterson. He's still assistant agriculture minister right now.
You had to rent a boat. I guess there were no roads then. So
No, there wasn't any road from
Caslow.
Caslow to Lardeau.
Mhm.
We had to rent a boat to come that far. And he must have joined us there, I don't know. Anyway,
John
he
can
went
remember.
with us up to Hauser, and finally he and Bob came across from Lardeau to look over Argenta a little bit.
They went to Meadow Creek, and the prices rose like everything, because they had this idea that all these people were just, that they had left all their Cadillacs down on the other side of the border, and were coasting around with these old Model A's to give the impression that they didn't have much money. And so, all their land prices went up, and you couldn't convince them at all. No way. And that was at a creek. And
Hangburn.
Hangburn, and what about the Abbeys? And, well, just a whole, bonuses, everybody.
Well, we didn't like the looks of that swampland of Abby's anyway.
So how about Hauser? Was there a lot of land for sale up there?
No. Well, Hinks had land up there. He was a wealthy Englishman. Had land at Crawford Bay.
He was Captain Hinks with his wife was a Wedgwood, connected with Wedgwood, China or whatever in England.
Well, they were quite.
Anyway.
And their houses were Wedgwood.
It tells also, George tells about one of them that they went to see down in Crawford Bay, or not far from there. And it was, but it was not altogether satisfactory in some way. And so they did come to Argenta, and the people were nice, and the people believed them that they didn't have a great deal, and they helped.
Well, Shuddy It was Shelley Land, is
You
where
know
the
Shelley
boys
Land.
are.
Mhm.
He was practically dead anyway, and so was Mrs. The lady that owned this place. In fact, she died 3 or 4 days after I gave her a check for the place.
Hmm.
But if it had gone into her family's heirs, we never would have gotten it.
Hmm. So
But-
you came in a boat for the first time to Argenta and landed at the wharf and walked around?
I don't know whether,
I think you walked around.
yeah, Bob and Sigurd did. They walked out that road that way a little ways.
And looked at the property
And
of
then
the shed.
later, we got Model A up to Lardeau somehow
on the bar.
on the barge and drove around. There was a road
Mhm.
way around.
26 miles to come to the
So we drove around later.
Who was living in Argenta then?
Oh,
Tars and Begwins and Sozicks.
yeah. And,
Who was in the Coleman place?
Nobody.
Just empty?
oh yeah.
And who was at Valentine's? Gallus's?
Gallus's. But they weren't there. Well, Grandma Gallus was, I guess.
I think they were there when we came, but she wasn't there very long after we came.
So all the old places, some of them had people in them. The last of the families.
Mm-hmm.
Gallus's,
They,
Sozicks.
Steve and Dorothy, and also Father, they're Steve's parents.
Mhm.
But they were Steve and Dorothy were in the little house there where Glenn
Mhm.
is. And the Weber house was at Sozicks.
And was there anyone living out in the flats?
No. There was only a little shacky house out there.
That were still there?
And a barn sort of thing.
Mhm. And then Roy wasn't farming then? Was
No,
he?
Roy was just a boy down at the, not very much older than Ted, down at the landing. There was no road between here and Johnson's Landing either.
Hmm.
Trail,
You could walk to
Trail.
Johnson's Landing?
Yeah.
8
we could
miles.
walk. And we did once.
You did once.
George
Ted and
Lloyd.
I did. And we didn't know where McNichols had it. They had a store then up on the, where the Mrs. McNichols still is. And we got down to the wharf, not knowing just which way to go. And we were figuring out going and getting some groceries and coming back on the way. So,
Carlson,
Ralph Carson.
Carlson took them
He
out.
went up that straight trail like a monkey. We were about food out anyway. We had trouble. We couldn't keep up with him at all. But he led us up to McNichols, straight across country. Disregarded all roads. And then we got our groceries and rode down. Larry McNichol was the storekeeper mostly. Rode down in his pickup to the wharf.
What kind of store? Vegetables from their farm?
Just a little regular little country store with,
Yeah.
they served the neighborhood, and people up here called, they had singles phones, and they would call down and order, and they'd send it up on the boat.
Hmm.
They had all sorts of things, like canned goods, cheese.
Not as big as Larry Greenlaw's, but on that order.
Hmm. And you made use of it because that was the nearest store.
That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, otherwise
How often did you go out to Nelson and Caslow to shop?
I was here 5 years before I went
To
Nelson.
Nelson. How about
I
Caslow?
went once there sometime in that era time.
5 years. And that was because it was so hard to get up?
There wasn't a lot of the time there wasn't a road. You had to go on the boat. And then a lot of the time we didn't have a car that would go. So
Did they take your car on the boat?
you could on the Moyer, you could drive in, go down. But then you see the Moyer didn't go to Nelson. It went to Balfour, and that was a railroad place. So you couldn't go on the boat with your car any further than you wouldn't go to Caslow. And the road from Caslow to Nelson was just about as horrible as it could be.
You must not have had any income the first year or two because you didn't...
Well, we labored.
Scarcely.
There was no employment then, was there?
A little. George worked a little while for the...
Had 1 or 2 days road work, courtesy of
Somebody. Doesn't matter. And
still there. This is a trailer court.
Oh, Alexander.
Alexander, yeah.
This was working on the road to...
And just they had a few little jobs to pick up. No, we didn't have any much income. We were poor, but we weren't hungry.
You grew your own here. You already had orchard and garden that you
We had
bought.
an orchard, but our garden the first year, of course, we didn't get it in until about the 1st of July or later, and so it didn't amount to much. But I don't know how we hardly did, but we did.
This isn't the house that was here when you
No,
were
it burned.
Was that?
It was a log house, and it burned.
How long did you live in the log house?
Till March 21st, 1954.
So you were here for 2 years in the log house?
Yeah.
With 3 kids? 4 kids? 1, 2, 3. 3 boys.
3.
And then, you had a fire that burned it down?
Chimney fire.
Chimney fire. It's an old place.
Cedar logs, huge cedar logs, just went so nicely in the fire.
Oh.
Oh boy, it was a dilly of a fire.
In March, you had no house in the middle.
Yeah, and so there was no one living in the Dallas house at that time. And we lived in there until we got this part of this house built.
Did the community raise it for you, or did you build it yourself?
The men...
Mostly community, yes.
Well, the men, John Rush and Bob and Elmer was here too, and he helped.
Yeah.
And one day they had sort of a community get-together, did some. But we hadn't any fire insurance.
Did you ever try any kinds of business or try to make a go of it, some kind of enterprise?
Yeah, we had chickens. We had 750 laying hens at one point.
In the barn back there?
Yeah, that was what it was built for.
Wow. And you shipped them to Nelson?
And you shipped them to Nelson as long as they went on the boat. Why, they arrived there in pretty good shape. But when they took the boat off, and if they had to go by road, why, they would no longer be grade A eggs. They would be shooken. Shaken up. And besides, we had we couldn't raise the feed here. There's no way. So we had to ship in the feed and ship out the eggs. And George developed an allergy to feathers and hemorrhaged every time terribly. So we just didn't have chickens. We sold them.
How long did you try that for? Several years? Or?
Not several years.
A
couple of years.
Was it a good business? I mean, did it?
No,
Well,
we could
no.
pay for the chicken. We could feed the chickens.
You could feed the chickens and you had all the eggs you wanted?
Yes.
Yeah, chicken.
No wonder I don't eat eggs for breakfast.
I guess there would be fires to fight too in the earth for money.
Well,
I never
George
went down
didn't
one of those.
Really, the men were too old to be pioneers when they came. They really were. I mean, you know, it's really is a young man's job.
You were in your 40s when you came?
50.
50s. Wow. Sure.
All the others were in their 40s, but I was 10 years older than the rest of them.
Hmm.
And I had the least education and so on and so on.
But you had a lot of practical know-how.
I had,
You know, as far as education goes, you were educated.
I thought I could be the operator, the main operator for the tractor when Hugh bought one, but no, when I saw all the others boshing it up, I had to do with the fixing of it.
Hugh bought a tractor,
He bought a D6
a D6 cat.
without even consulting the rest of us at all.
Just went down to Nelson and got it.
To push earth around up here. So
Yeah.
you could put
Clear
a farm.
land. No, it was quite a little while after he was here that he put the power up.
Oh yeah.
So he bought it for,
For the co-op. See, they formed sort of a cooperative,
what was that? I don't know about
Delta
that.
Co-op.
Huh.
And the men, and they were going to raise cattle.
We had cattle
And
for a while.
then they were going to raise hogs
Where?
on the flats. Up by.
Up by Boyd's?
And everybody put in a certain amount of work, you know, each week, all the men. All except Stevenson's. And Helen was the teacher, so they didn't. And John kept house for them. And,
That was after the chickens?
well, the chickens kind of came. We thought that was going to be a cooperative adventure too. But I only thought that when I saw how much work it was, grading eggs and cleaning chickens and things, that they decided that it wasn't enough for anyone, you know.
How did you get a lot of eggs? I mean, you had hundreds of eggs a day,
Oh yeah,
yes.
we did all right that way.
and you shipped them out what, twice
By
a
the
week
boat.
or once a
Well,
week?
once a week on the boat.
So you'd have 1,000 eggs.
Well, yeah, we had there were crates, cases, you know, with double. How many is there in a case?
Dozen?
Yeah, a dozen anyway.
30 in each end, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were double. 14 we would sit out at a time. One time, I remember.
Wow.
But they weren't. If they'd been as much now as now, but you know, 37 cents a dozen wasn't very much.
And all your feed came from Creston, or?
Yes.
So you were going to operate a cat, but you ended up repairing it.
You know, fixing all. He operated it some,
Oh yes, I did.
but he.
And when you got stuck with it, I had to go out and dig it out.
Well, why?
Many times.
But did you know how to operate the machine?
Oh yes, I had a cat down in California.
Oh.
For years and years.
So I thought I was probably the operator. And Bob was just as good as I was. But the rest of them
Hadn't ever
had never
had
been.
experience.
He was the worst at backing it up.
Did it take some practice?
Oh, yeah. A little
Thinking
sense.
of Bill.
I know, Bill's thinking of
Yeah,
Bill
he
too.
was asking, how do you learn?
I said to ask
Started
Ted,
from horse to 2 horses to wheel tractor to a Caterpillar to then I got the bulldozer put on the Caterpillar.
Worked your way up.
Mhm.
You started with horses.
In Temple City,
one horse,
in
wagon.
California.
What were you doing? Carting or?
No, plowing lots and gardens.
Doing orchard work. See, at that time there were lots of orange groves,
Mm-hmm.
and you cultivated orange groves.
Thousands of vacant lots.
And in the spring, before it got too dry, all those vacant lots had to be cleared for fire prevention.
The vacant lots were for people moving in.
The vacant lots were lots that people held for speculation, a lot of them.
And you plowed them all up to keep the weeds down?
Mhm, burned them all.
Huh.
It's a business.
Yeah.
Anyway. But here, we see, when John and Helen and we came, there were just the two families of us. But we had meetings, a little meeting. In one of my letters, I said it was only just the two families, but they were good meetings, and I guess we needed them or something because of the struggles we were having. I guess that was the reason they were good meetings.
Was it a big change for you? I mean, to move into such an isolated place, or did you?
It was changed to move in such an isolated place. I guess I didn't feel isolated, but it was much easier for me because I had grown up on a farm and had done all these sorts of things, and I learned to cook on a wood-burning stove. Ruth Boyd never had, and it was very, very difficult for her. She was always getting burned. She had blisters on her hands because just reaching in an oven or putting in fuel, you forget the whole thing is hot. And it was hard. And I always thought that we were pretty lucky because George said we both of us had high school education. We went through high school. But George always felt as if we weren't educated, but I always felt it didn't really matter. I mean, we weren't schooled. We weren't schooled, but we did have a fundamental education of things that helped us live in a situation like this.
Were there people up? Let's see. The Bagmans had all their property up there.
Mm-hmm.
Two houses.
Yeah,
George and Charlie.
and Charlie and Ruth. Mm-hmm.
And then who was up in the beyond by the co-op there? Were the Tars living up there?
The Tars had the place that's the Fisher,
Farley,
Farley. Mm-hmm. And that was all. There was nothing beyond that. There was no house up here. Our house was. The Boyds had. The Wolves. The cabin. You know the cabin.
La Folie cabin?
No, the Folie cabin wasn't there. The
Wolf cabin.
The wolf cabin down there. That was there, but nobody was living in it except
Who had built
horses. Courtney Tar.
Uh-huh.
And then between here and the Begwin house, there was no one living at all. No house. And then where the Hawkins are was George. He and his family lived there. And then on up is where the Farley house was. And that was all. And down here, on this, there was this place, and it was vacant and falling into the cellar. And then the Valentine's place was Gallus's, and the Weber place was the senior Sozaks. And then up there where that little house where Glenn is, that was Dorothy and Steve. And that was all.
And then there was the hotel at the foot of by the wharf.
Yeah, where Stevenson. There was no one living there.
There was no one. Where did the Stevensons live?
They lived in that.
Yeah,
they rented that.
From
Tar.
Tars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, the father, whatever his name was, Mr. Tar. And it had the hotel and the cabin, and then the schoolhouse was where the school is now.
Did your kids go to school there? Who taught them?
Helen.
When she came and started teaching, had there been anyone?
There hadn't been any school for years because there weren't enough children.
So you brought a.
We brought a batch.
Were there any kids?
Yes.
Yes.
There were the
Three.
George Begwin's daughter. That was the only one that was
Oh yeah.
ready.
She was 2 or 3 tars.
And 2 or 3, yeah.
2 tars.
No, 2,
girls
the
anyway.
girls. We're 3 here.
Steve was past school age by then.
Steve.
Wasn't he? Steve Sosek.
Oh yes, he was married and had Arlene, little girl, but she was just
She
a
wasn't
cute
old
little
enough
girl,
yet.
about Dawn's age, little, cute. And that was, and people were going to be moving away because, there was no prospects here at all. Steve and Dorothy were going to have to move, they thought, and the Bedouins too.
Why did you folks coming make for more
Made-
prospects?
It made a school,
And that was all the difference?
and that was all the difference.
Mm.
And then, of course, a lot of the time, and we added to the general population. Post office became more lively, and the school, of course, and the community dances, and it just added a spark to the whole community.
Mm.
We were all right as long as nothing went wrong, and then we were welcome, and then when something that everybody didn't like, why it was our fault, and we instantly became, see what you people brought in.
Well, the idea of the co-op must have been strange to most of the people living way up here.
Well, they had lumber co-ops that had before, sawmill, and the only thing about that was that I guess the guy, the head one, took everything and went or something. Anyway, it folded.
Was that down by the wharf?
No, the Tars had a sawmill there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But no, this was out towards Hauser and out that way. And that was the beginning of prosperity because the men got the building of that school over here, the rural center.
The rural center, and we built one like it over at a creek.
Hmm.
And
You
we
and
just began to look up. You got
a little. I guess it didn't take much money to make ends meet around here.
no,
No.
not much.
Now you've got government pension.
And now we have. After a while, George became postmaster, and I did the janitor work over at the rural center, and that was what we lived on.
Who was the postmaster when you came?
Ruth Beckman.
Ruth Begman. So did you go up to their house for the mail?
We went down to the school where they started it. See, the boat brought the
Got it
mail
off
in.
the boat and sorted it in the schoolhouse down there.
So everybody be down there for the boat?
And we wore our
Yeah, that was
the men
a
shaved.
community get together.
It came
And the
once
funniest one
a
was
week.
there was a whole lot of tourists on the Moyer with cameras hanging out
Taking
front of
pictures
them.
of
Thought they were taking pictures of the natives, and all of a sudden there was a little bear way up on the bank above the wharf. Everybody looked at that and forgot their cameras and forgot the natives.
Forgot to take any pictures or anything. There they were standing there with their cameras hanging down in.
Oh, look at that!
Were there a lot of tourists on the
Oh
way
yes,
all the time?
a lot of in the
Well, in the
summertime.
summertime, yeah.
Came up for the ride up
Would
and
they
down.
did they have any time to come ashore?
No,
No.
they just came up for the ride up the lake and back down again.
Hmm. The Moye must have been a sight.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Yes, it was.
We could see it from the smoke of it, where Carolyn has her house. We could see the smoke, and we could tell.
Was it ever late?
Oh,
Yeah.
sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it the lake was rough. I remember one time they really they managed to get one big rope on one of the dolphin things, and then the wind just swung it around there on the other side of the wharf. If they hadn't had
They struggled for several minutes before it would give up. Before they could win against the wind to get it to swing back around where they wanted to.
because
It was hung out there.
it was shallow, you know, and
Pretty soon they would have been aground.
if they hadn't gotten that one rope fastened, why they would have been nothing they could have done to keep it going right up on the beach. But that was our shot in the arm each week.
Yeah. Most of them have pretty queer spaces in there.
He's been used to being told.
Yeah.
Prompted.
Well, what about? I want to know a little bit more about why you left California and all. Was it an active thing for you? Were you doing a lot of political things in California?
No, I don't think we weren't.
Were there specific issues, or I mean, the draft was kind of a general thing that was.
Yeah, and the taxes on that place, we couldn't hold up our end on that.
Because the suburbs were moving closer. Or?
Yeah.
They just went up there.
Oh, they were going up like they are now here. And we weren't doing our share of that. We just couldn't.
So you weren't earning a lot of money down there either?
Well,
No,
Jordan's business,
my business was going in.
that kind of people.
They were turning over to contractors having their own equipment and doing all their own contracting. So there wasn't.
There was no landscape work was done.
When we moved to Temple City, it started to go down anyway. I was out of Aldity, and others were taking up where I had been too.
Well, and riding that old tractor was very hard. It was exceedingly rough. Anyway, just didn't see, there was no future there.
No.
But John and Helen, of course, they had a political reason. I mean, you've talked to them about the loyalty oath, things like that. And we just wanted to get away from the States.
But you were Canadian, George?
Yeah.
Where were you born?
Oh, North Ontario.
In Ontario?
Yeah.
And your family was all back there?
Still is.
Most of them.
Why did you come out to California? Just working your way?
Young fella looking for a wife sometime or other here and there.
That was the end of the couldn't go any further. The Pacific was there, so he had to do with what he found.
And you worked the harvest and worked the crops on farms?
I went to the harvest in 1925.
No, that was in Canada. That was when he was.
Yeah.
That wasn't when he was on the way to California.
Oh, no.
You worked the harvest in 25. Did you take the, what do they call it, the special train where you paid by the mile? What was that?
I don't remember what we paid.
You paid a straight fare to Winnipeg and then so many cents per mile beyond that or something?
Anyway, Saskatoon is where we went. And there were friends there, the Wakes, and
I didn't know them.
well, you know, the one we met that married Mary something or other. You met them.
How old were you
Mary.
then? 1925.
25.
25. And were you driving a team? Is that where you learned to work with
Oh, I
horses?
was raised on a farm. And I worked as a hired man 3 years for John Pritchard and 1 year for Aiden Stevens and 1 year for Bernie Palmer.
That was after you graduated. He went to Olney boarding school and graduated from Olney. And then went home a while.
And then I went to Youngstown and Warren, Ohio, and got jobs in factories.
Could you just cross the border that easy, or
Oh yeah, no trouble.
and work?
Except that I went once and didn't talk to the man, and
It wasn't all, I mean, there still had to be some red tape done. You didn't put that done.
I had a car then, and I drove off, and he went off to somewhere else, and I drove off, clear off to Ohio, and got a job,
And you got picked up.
and they picked me up, put me in jail.
Put you in jail for illegal entry into the country?
Well, not consulting with them, not very illegal entry either. I think if I had stayed and talked to the guy, it would have been all right.
What kind of factories were you working in? Automobiles?
No, one was making a sort of stamp mill, or
Yeah, metal lath, wasn't it? You said?
yeah, several departments. They made metal lath, and they made all sorts of things with punch presses and small.
Then you worked with a coke mill somewhere.
Yeah, that was in Youngstown, building coke ovens. Most of the time, I guess, we worked with a pipe fitter in that. Boy, that was a busy affair. The pipes from 2 feet diameter woven around down to ½ inch. Oh.
And you wound, what is it, amateurs?
Yeah, the
Amateurs?
last job was
Not amateurs, amateurs.
Calvin Root went around the country getting old Ford armatures to be rewound. I did that, rewinding the armatures in an old schoolhouse. And worked a little while in a freight office at Phalanx, Ohio.
Were there a lot of Canadians down there working?
I don't know.
Were there no jobs in Ontario? There were lots of jobs down there.
No jobs like that in Ontario that I know of. Anyway, my cousin lived in Warren, and I boarded with them. Well, I sort of leaned on him to get me jobs.
Were your family Quakers?
Oh yeah.
So you had relations all around in the East?
Yeah.
Americans and...
There were cousins at Salem, several cousins at Salem.
Well, and my mother's brothers Uncle Henry and Uncle James Henderson, Henry Pollard, no, James Henderson. Henry Pollard was father's brother, but Uncle James was mother's brother. And in Iowa, there were other brothers of his mother's, Archie Henderson and Joseph Henderson, David Henderson in Minnesota. I mean, he just has relatives all over. And so we just started wandering around from one to the other.
Yeah, the first wander was to Iowa yearly meeting. Hope I'd find a girl there or something.
Terrible.
All that was vague, of course. Then when I did find one, I didn't know it until she told me. She didn't want me to go back.
Well, he'd been taking me places and going around, and we'd just been having such a nice time. All of a sudden he decided he was going to leave. Oh, don't leave.
And that was California?
That was California.
You were going to head back to Ontario? Or?
No, Iowa.
Minnesota.
Ohio. Anywhere.
Anywhere.
There might be a job.
There must have been lots of jobs at that time in California.
No, I
No, it was terrible.
close to the Depression.
Just before the Depression?
Yeah. In the,
1928.
it was into it before I left Phalanx. I remember the dad of the station agent, you know, I don't know, you weren't there. Things were booming, stock market was going wild. He was all excited over that. Pretty soon after that, it died.
That was probably one reason that George was wandering around trying to find work.
Yeah.
When you lived out the Depression in California and started working with horses?
My father had that old lady, and father was working for the water company and couldn't tend to his orchard work, and so he got George to take that. And but one horse and a wagon wasn't enough to suit George, and so he built a trailer and convinced old lady that it was a good idea to get in, and hung the harrows and the plows and things on the trailer and pulled it with the old Oakland, and he went around with lady in the trailer, and that way he could do a lot more work. You see, it took a lot less time.
Take your horse to the customers.
And then decided that he needed a team, and so we bought Millie. So we had a black and white team, and had to build a bigger trailer. And so then went around, and then they were sort of old and decrepit, and so he got a team of mules.
I rented
it.
teams of mules several times.
Finally bought it. And then he didn't like horses and mules and things. He wanted machinery. So that's the beginning of the tractor era.
Yeah.
I guess a cat can do a lot more.
You know, also get more pay
Yeah.
and more fun, I guess.
Yeah.
Where were you when the war broke out?
Altadena.
Were there a lot of Japanese Americans there? Did friends get involved
Yes.
in that?
Oh yeah.
We're Japanese girls, people that we knew very well. Were attendees of meetings, you know, and they were all put in concentration camps. It was a very sad time. Helen Stevenson had some very close Japanese girlfriends who were put away And we did what we could, which wasn't much. I know that there was one, and the Nicholsons, Herbert and Adeline Nicholson, had been missionaries in Japan. They taught fluent Japanese. And they kept track and helped people as much as they could, you know. And I know Madeline came by and said that one of their friends was expecting a baby. She had nothing, and no way of getting anything, and no way of making anything, and she did. And so I got a basket and fixed it up and made a whole outfit, lay it, and took it to them. We'd make cookies and send because they didn't. And you know, the guards take their dirty old things and poke through to see whether they were, to be sure we weren't sending contraband or whatever. Oh, I was so angry with them. Oh, they were so horrible. It just was horrid. And so that was, we went, Edith was a little girl going to public school, and the ammunition factories made the population just swell like everything, and the schools, therefore, and they took to having 40 students in her class or more. One batch in the morning and 40 in others in the afternoon. There was no, and then they had races about buying war bonds, and of course, we didn't want Edith to do that, but it wasn't fair for a little, 8 or 9 year old person to be the only one in her room of 40, to not be going on these sprees and celebrations. And that was when we decided, George and I, and Ted was just ready to start school. We just couldn't think of them having to face that. And so we went down to talk with Helen's mother to see whether she thought maybe Helen would be interested in helping start her friend's school. And we said, oh no, Helen was a high school teacher, she wouldn't want to do that. But she advised us to go and talk to John and Alice Way, and so we went and talked to them. Alice was canning apricots, and we sat around in her hot kitchen while she was canning apricots and talked about a school. And John Way said, well, he hadn't really, they'd talked about having a school, they hadn't really thought about that this was the time. And George and I were very sure this was the time. And so we did. And we found out that Helen was interested, and she would like to be teacher. And one of the other teachers' husband was in camp, CO camp, and that was Wayne Scott. So we had the school in my Uncle Charles's house in Altadena, and it just grew and grew and grew. And this is one reason I feel so. I suppose I have this strong feeling of that if a thing is right, it goes, you know. We had nothing. We didn't, but we did with what we had, and money kept coming in, and teachers and scholars and books and everything, and it was right that we did it, you know. And this is the way I feel about Friends School now, that if it's the right thing, why it works. You don't just sit around and say that, well, we have faith it'll work. You have to work too, but you don't depend on government. I mean, I'm not going to be bought. Don't know whether I've talked to Elaine about that or not. I better, hadn't I? Anyway, and the school is still going, you know. That's Pacific Aquarius.
Yeah.
Why that name? I don't know.
Oh, well, my grandfather and George's grandfather went to Aqua School in England.
Oh, yeah.
Friends School. And this was on the Pacific Coast. And since we were the ones that sparked that school down there, why they said we'll name it Pacific Aquarius.
Have you both gone to Friends schools?
I never went to anything else. Neither did George.
Yeah, we had a little Friends school in Ontario.
And at Mapleside, Iowa. And Scattergood I went to, and George went to Olney.
Where was that? It was Scattergood's.
It was in Iowa, West
Iowa.
Branch. Mhm.
But Onley is where.
Only in Barnesville, Ohio. That's still going and growing.
Scattergood is too. The Olney boarding schools under the care of Ohio Conservative Yearly Meeting, although it's branched out and there's other. And Iowa Yearly Meeting, Conservative, although it also had other types of friends. So,
did you hear a lot of stories about early Argenta when you came? I mean, Charlie Bateman.
the Stevensons are the ones that got those. They know them better than they were. Much better at asking questions and delving into past history than we were. We just went along and planted our garden and worked when we could. Enjoyed our neighbors, but we didn't go out and ask questions like Stevenson. We did hear stories. We heard about this guy, the man that the 6 acres that are above our place that we should have gotten that belonged to the senior, Billy Salzett, Mr. Salzett. And we could have, he bought them of the guy that owned this place. It's a charity.
Gustav Schendel?
No.
Carl?
No. Mrs. Kettlewell was the daughter. And it's silly to not be able to think of that name. George was struggling with it, and I thought maybe it'd come to me. Anyway.
Not Volchan?
No. He and Mr. Salzett were always quarreling over water. See, the water came from the creek. And it had to come across this place up above. And this old guy that lived here that owned this place was always turning it off, you know, and making trouble. And so Billy Salzett bought it. He traded, he said, for a beef animal.
Or something, yeah.
But then, you know, he didn't pay the taxes on it. The taxes all had, when we came, the taxes were still being paid by Mrs. Kettlewell's mother. And that was years and years. And we should have just gotten it. But we just didn't have that much extra. We were afraid to spend the extra, whatever it was, $100 to get it for food. We need that $100 to eat on. And I guess we did.
Need it.
Anyway, that was one of the things that the stories we used to tell. Mr. Salzett was very interesting storyteller.
Well, the taxes
weren't much, $3 or something a year.
$4 or something a
or
year.
$1.25 or something.
Every year.
You folks came just about the time that social credit got in.
Yeah.
Almost to the year, I guess. Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Bennett?
I guess so.
Bennett.
When did you become citizens?
Well, George was.
Oh, right.
And you see, and I married him, or he married me. So I became a British subject. So all I had to do was to say I wanted to be a Canadian, and that was it. I guess I paid $5 for my certificate or something. And the boys, all our children were, except Don, and he was born too late. So he had to, he got his by asking too. They said, well, why didn't you tend to getting him in? And I said, we didn't know we could. And so that was very easily done.
When you first came, who was the MP for this area?
Harding.
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 Oh, no, ahead of him.
Harridge. Oh, no,
Harridge.
he was the national. Harding was the.
Oh yeah, I guess that's right.
We certainly were impressed with the politicians of that time, and our
Harridge
our
and Harding were
they
especially good.
were just very fine people. Not
Did they come up around here campaigning?
Yes,
They came up around, they kept track of how people were getting along and what their problems were. They knew everybody, well, there weren't many, of course. They knew everybody by name and what they were doing and what they were raising, what they maybe they could.
Harridge was quite strong on saving the forest and farming it rather than like most logging companies were doing.
Conservation.
Conservation, yeah.
There must not have been too much logging up here when you first came, was there?
Well,
there had
was
been.
logging, and there was not BC. What was it they called themselves? Kept changing.
Oh.
Anyway, there were logging company. George worked for a while for a logging company that was.
Were you skidding?
Well, our co-op harvested quite a few logs.
Yeah, but before that, when George Begwin was running the cat and you were chokerman.
Oh yes.
It wasn't very long because his rheumatism kept flaring up.
Where were you logging? Up the Duncan? Or?
About 28 mile or something.
On the Duncan?
On that road. 33 miles to Gerard.
Oh, right.
28 miles.
Up the
27
Lardeau.
miles. Yeah.
Near Poplar Creek?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was clear-cut logging? Big.
No. Oh no.
Not him.
Wasn't clear cut. Pat was the boss then. He's about as old as I am. I guess he's still alive. Yeah, I've seen him.
You worked with George Begwin. He had a cat and he was skidding, or?
Oh, we used a company cat. Like he was skidding and you were. Don't you remember?
Yeah, vaguely.
Was Charlie and Ruth were quite old then? They weren't doing much? Or?
No, they weren't. They were. Well, she was postmistress, but they had. He was connected with royalty or something in France. He had an income.
So were they working that land? Did they have cattle?
Yes, they worked hard. George Begwin had dairy cows
That was the son,
to start with,
right?
yes, and Charlie, and they raised their food, and they harvested the hay that grew on the hillsides, and I don't think they sold anything, but then they.
Well, they did sell cream for a while.
And they sold us milk for a while.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened to us that was sort of interesting, we would get these gallon bottles of milk, and we had a box up here with the water running through it to keep it cold. And early one morning when I was just barely awake, I went out to get it, and it wasn't there. And I came back, and it had to be there, so I went out again, and it wasn't there. I knew I'd put it there, so we didn't have any milk. And we were walking up in our woods sometime afterwards, and there was this big tree, and right down there at the foot of it, here was the jar with the lid off, and a hole in the top of the lid.